This is Between the Lines. Today, we dissect the road less traveled.
Hello, we are in chapter 45, Entropy and Original Sin. And we know that this book is about spiritual growth and about mental growth, if you will. And we have been trying to study what are the thrusters or the possibilities towards this growth. And at the same time, if we are trying to know what propulses us or impulses us towards growth, we are at the same time talking about the impediments of it. And the highest or the greatest impediments that we have towards growth are, we have seen this in the book, for example, in the section of discipline. One of the main impediments is avoiding suffering, avoiding or taking the easy way out, and this idea that we don't want to put the effort into suffering or to spend the time enough to suffer and understand how to move forward. And in the other section, love, one of the impediments is the unwillingness, or when we don't want to put this effort again in order to extend ourselves or to spread our love onto ourselves and others. And now in these sections, the last ones, spiritual growth and grace, we are talking about entropy. And entropy is this manifestation that we have against growth, or this resistance against growth. So those are different ways that we resist, or we try not to put the effort and not to move towards growth. Sometimes consciously or unconsciously, of course. And in this very chapter, the doctor talks about the original sin. And again, if you're not a Judeo-Christian, or you don't like these ideas of Judeo-Christianism, I will make a parallel with other beliefs, we could say, or other religions in the end. But let's stick to this idea of the original sin that the doctor mentions here, making in our minds this idea of suspension of beliefs. So for a moment, let's suspend our current beliefs, especially if you don't believe in this kind of religion or ideas or concepts or things, and let's assume this as a story that the doctor is telling, and for a moment we will consider this story from the Bible to be true. I had to do the exercise myself in order to be able to understand the hidden treasures or the pearls that we can get out of this story and this idea that the doctor is presenting. So here he talks about the original sin, which is this story from the early chapters of the Bible that says Adam and Eve, the very first people on earth, a male and a female, were living in a paradise, and they had everything available for them in this paradise, except for one thing that God had forbidden them to access to, and that was the tree of knowledge, or the tree of life. And so they couldn't eat the fruit from that tree, which was, according to many textbooks, an apple. However, one day, apparently a serpent, which tends to represent evil, the devil, or Satan, or however, this evil entity that appears in this paradise and tempts Eve and talks her in order for her to be able to take this an apple from the tree and eat it. And that way she would be able to know everything and have the same knowledge as God did. And she does so, and then she goes and gives also the apple to Adam. And then God comes to paradise and says, "You have disobeyed me," and we know that that constitutes the original sin from the Bible, and they are cast away from paradise. So this is the story from the Bible. And here the interesting thing is that the doctor mentions that he actually questions himself, why did Adam and Eve not confront God, or the serpent told his story about what they would get from eating the apple, but why they didn't confront God in order to get more explanations on why they shouldn't eat from that tree. They only accepted that it was forbidden. And that is when the doctor says it was because they were lazy. They didn't want, out of fear, in this case, maybe they feared that God would tell them, "Why are you talking to a serpent?" or whatever. They just decided not to confront him, or in order to understand what would happen if they ate the apple. So the doctor says, even out of fear, maybe they ended up being lazy. So for the doctor, laziness is the original sin. That is something that every human has, laziness. And even if you're a child, you're young, you're old, you're whatever age you are, whatever possibilities in life you have, or whatever capabilities that you have, you will be lazy at some time, or we all have this component of laziness inside of us. And for example, the doctor mentions many people come to therapy because they know they have to change something in their lives in order to move forward. They feel stuck, or they feel that they are not growing, they are not progressing in life, they have problems, they don't know how to move forward. And however, after some time, they will leave therapy with no results, or because they had realized that they have to change something and they don't want to put the effort into this change, because it will mean, for example, a divorce, or it will mean getting away from friends, family, or it will take some suffering for them to change. So they decide not to do that and just to go away. That also I have seen that in companies. I work with transformation, with change inside of companies, and it's exactly the same. People have this resistance to change, and that is inherent to us as human beings. It's not that it's something initially wrong with them. It's the way we operate. But this, we have to be conscious about this in order to put the effort to surpass this laziness that we have. Even though, again, this laziness can be disguised as fear or resistance, and in the end, what the doctor calls here, and we have been calling since a few chapters back, entropy. Something that is bound to happen, because every time we try to grow, we have to fight against this entropy, against this resistance. And this fight never ends. But coming back to this, that everyone is lazy, you may be young, old, again, you may be wise or stupid, but you will be lazy to a certain amount at any time. So that is why the doctor calls it the original sin. And when do we make up these excuses in order, because we tend to rationalize. when we are lazy, most of us don't say I am lazy, or we say, no, I'm too busy, I'm too old for this, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, whatever it is, and we make up excuses for our laziness. And so the doctor here also says, and this is when I will link this to a different concept from a different religion. He says that we have, all of us have laziness in us, and all of us have a a healthy and a sick person inside of us. And different degrees, we can say, different flavors, however you want to call it, or in different proportions, but we all have this inside of us. And that made me think of a famous Tai Chi symbol, if you remember, from the generally called yin yang, when you have the two colors. And if you pay attention, you have inside of each color, white has a little point of black, and black has a little point of white inside of it. So that is laziness for us. Even if you are super wise or super productive, you will have a little bit of laziness there. And on the contrary, if you consider yourself to be a total lazy, you will have inside of you this seed of we could say productiveness or effort. So that was the idea I wanted to share with you, that I thought could be really graphic in order for us to understand that we are all lazy from one stand to the other, and that is why we have to fight against our own laziness in order to grow, in order to update our maps of reality, in order to be more disciplined, and in order to progress towards this spiritual growth or mental growth or maturity, right? So I hope you like this chapter. I certainly didn't show it. At first I had to fight again my own resistance against this biblical story, but in the end I think I have found something interesting to share with you. So please comment if you like this, or how else would you say you could picture this idea of laziness. So see you next Sunday. Bye bye.
Stay tuned for Uluwa's next episode.